Well, hello, everyone. If you've landed here, you've landed on Let's Talk News. I'm your host, Leticia Romero, and this is Monday, and we are going to talk about restitution. Restitution for all the people who have been targeted by the Biden administration, the Obama administration, and even the Bush administration, Reagan, Bush the father, everybody who's been targeted, period. We're going to talk about it because today, President Trump, his DOJ, unveiled a anti-weaponization fund. And there's almost $2 billion in that fund. And what's going to happen with that fund is that for people who believe that they've been targeted due to their political beliefs, you could apply to this fund for restitution for whatever it was that it cost you. And it could be anything, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you went to jail or anything like that. It could be that you lost money because when the government was playing that hoax on us where we weren't allowed to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop, or how about COVID? We weren't allowed to talk about COVID. And let's say you had a business, and because you talked about COVID, they slowed down your page or blocked your page. Kind of like us, right? Right Stuff. And before that, I mean, my page was blocked numerous times, and I've been kicked off numerous times. And that's why I'm fighting so hard to get back to 1,000 so that I can shove it up YouTube's rear end. But I lost revenue because I was targeted, canceled. Because I was there on January 6th, because I spoke about COVID, because I refused to be silent about the Hunter Biden laptop. So things like that. Maybe, you lost money. Maybe you lost your job because you were targeted somehow. Anyway, it's not up to me to say, or you. It's going to be a commission. But I'm going to say hello quickly first. It is Kevin Wall from the other side of the earth, but the same side of the issues. Good to have you. And we have Santillian's with us. Hello, Santillian from Hawaii, where hopefully the corruption is getting cleaned up. And then we have Andrew Dorman. How are you, darling? Karen, good to have you. Francine is with us tonight. Hello, Francine. Angela Ricca is with us. And it also includes COVID. I was doxxed for it. Okay, well, there you go. It includes everything. And it's happening right now again. Just by the way, YouTube has slowed down our shows to a crawl because we're getting dangerously close to that 1,000. But anyway, I will show you NBC's coverage of this, which is laughable. Hang on, here we go.
The Justice Department announcing a settlement after President Trump dropped his $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS over leaked tax returns.
As part of this deal, the DOJ unveiling a $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund to pay damages to Trump's allies. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba is joining us now with more on this. So I realize this is just coming to light at this moment, Monica. The president moving to drop his case against the IRS. Remind us where that comes from, the origin of this. And hours before the settlement was announced, what else is in the deal?
Yeah, Sam and Vicky, this is pretty significant for a couple of reasons. You mentioned that lawsuit specifically with the IRS. That was something that related to the president and his adult sons and their tax returns. Remember that essentially he was suing the government, the Internal Revenue Service, over that. Now, in a settlement over that case, they are now setting up that anti-weaponization fund, which is also really significant for a couple of reasons, because it's unclear exactly how that's going to work, but essentially the plaintiffs in this case, the president and his sons, have agreed that they're not going to get any kind of formal payment from the government, but they are going to receive, according to the Department of Justice, a formal apology, which is significant in and of itself. But in addition to that, now they are going to set up this fund that likely, guys, will be met with some legal challenges. It's going to have a commission that is going to set up a way for potentially anybody who wants to file a claim and attempt to prove how they were potentially wronged by the U.S. government to see if they can seek monetary compensation. But we are just getting some of these details in and learning more about it. But again, I think important to point out the context that this is something that could face a challenge before it becomes a reality.
Yeah, well, if it does become a reality, and I know it's early stages, Monica, but has the DOJ said anything else about who would be eligible for money from this fund?
Essentially, anybody who wants to make a claim, who says that they were potentially wronged either by the previous administration or a past administration. They say there's no partisan requirement to apply for this, that anybody from any political party can do so. But again, there's going to be a commission, it seems, that's going to be set up here with 5 different members. But what we don't know is how this is going to work in terms of who can approve who might get any kind of a settlement. And again, the logistics of how that would work.
Okay, so I don't know why they're at a loss, because it's, you know, it's right there on the website. You can, you know, figure it out, what's going to happen with this fund. And it's not the first of its kind. So to make it as if it was like, oh my God, is ridiculous. So our poll tonight: do you think Americans should receive a refund for fraudulent grants? Now, why am I asking this question? Well, because I was thinking, you know, this fund, I mean, we're all victims of kind of some past administrations doing some corrupt things. So why would we just stop at being targeted by the DOJ? I mean, you know, that's their fund, but why wouldn't we lobby to have a refund for all of us, dollar for dollar? Why wouldn't we, for all the fraudulent money that was out there? Why wouldn't that be a good idea? If you think that we Americans should receive a refund, dollar for dollar, for the fraudulent dough that went out to, I don't know, to the people in Minnesota, to the people in California, New York, Iowa, Medicare, Medicaid fraud, the billions of dollars. You know, 1 is for yes and 2 is for no. Now, they're telling me that this poll should update in live time, but I haven't seen it do that. Only once it's worked for us. But let's see if it does this time. Do you think Americans should receive a refund for fraudulent grants? Number 1 is yes. Number 2 is no. And I think, and I should have actually asked this in the poll, is do you think that it is proper for the DOJ to, look, it's working. There you go. To, maybe I'll do a second poll about that, you know, to offer this fund. I want to just show you. Let me see here. All right, so this is the Victims Fund, okay? You know, it's a crime victims fund. It was established in 1984 by the Victims of Crime Act, funded primarily by fines, penalties, forfeited bail bonds, and special assessments from federal criminal cases, not taxpayer dollars. As of early 2026, the fund balance exceeds $3.6 billion. This money supports state victim compensation programs in all 50 states, D.C., and U.S. territories. That's similar to Medicare, right? That they administer it through the state. Each state administers its own crime victim compensation program. These typically reimburse victims of violent crimes and sometimes family members for out-of-pocket expenses such as medical, dental bills, mental health counseling, lost wages, funeral, burial costs, relocation, or property damage with limits. Eligibility TCAPs and application processes vary by state. You generally apply in the state where the crime occurred. No arrest or conviction is usually required. So that's a victims fund, right? So that's for people who have suffered were the victims of a crime. And I would think that all of the members of the families who were killed by illegal migrants would be eligible to apply for that. I don't, $3.6 billion isn't a lot of money, and that's just to date. So I'm thinking they need to up that. I don't know what you all think, but I think they need to up that. And perhaps, just perhaps, this new anti-weaponization funds might cover something like that. Because if I was, God forbid, one of my family members was harmed by an illegal migrant, you bet your bottom dollar I would be suing the federal government. Let's see. Santillian says, submit a claim. I knew this was coming 6 months ago. I love it, Robert. He really is on top of stuff. The fraud investigation here is nuts. One dude running for my district representative in the state is begging me to not look into it. His page is all gay pride stuff. And today, who was it? Somebody, Chelsea Handler was condemning Pratt, the Los Angeles, the candidate for mayor in Los Angeles, because he was a heterosexual guy, and said a heterosexual guy should not be elected mayor of Los Angeles. I can't anymore with all of this. Hi, Susan. Good to have you. All right. So let's talk more. So that's the victims fund, right? But then there's special funds. The Specialized Federal Victim Compensation Fund, September 11th Victims Fund, the U.S. Victims of State-Sponsored Terrorism Fund. So both of those are still going strong. And you can, if you were a victim of any of these things, then you could apply for compensation. National Association of Crime Victim Compensation Boards, 9/11 related funds, and for terrorism. So there are funds already set up for special situations. So why is the news media and the Democrats acting like this is some crazy scenario that Trump, the DOJ, not Trump, the DOJ set up a fund for people who have been targeted by either the FBI, the CIA, the Justice Department, and others. And there, now I asked, and I looked into whether over the last 20 years, who sued the federal government and was paid for being targeted. And look at what I found. So this isn't everything. I asked for over the 20 years. Let's see. The claims are for blah, blah, blah. Such payouts are relatively uncommon at the federal level compared to the state wrongful conviction cases, as federal claims often face hurdles like qualified immunity, the Federal Tort Claims Act, exceptions of statutes of limitation. Many high-profile federal cases involve settlements rather than court judgments, and comprehensive public lists are limited. Most documented federal payouts stem from civil lawsuits alleging misconduct in investigation or prosecutions. And guess who's there? Michael Flynn. All right. So former National Secretary Advisor 2016 to 17 Russia investigation. In March 2026, the DOJ settled his malicious prosecution lawsuit filed in 2023 seeking $50 million for $1.25 million. Flynn had pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, later withdrawn after pardon, and alleged FBI DOJ misconduct in the Crossfire Hurricane probe. The Trump administration described it as addressing an historic injustice. And then Carter Page, Trump's 2016 campaign advisor, in April 2026, the DOJ settled claims related to flawed FBI FISA surveillance warrants, or FISA, I'm sorry, during the Russia investigation for $1.25 million. So I don't think that was a mistake, that both of those were settled. What happened today was Trump had a big lawsuit, and so did his sons, against the IRS because somebody there leaked their tax information, all of it. That person went to jail for 5 years, but Trump, as a citizen, had every right to sue the IRS. He won the settlement. They made a settlement with Trump, the IRS did, and what they did was no monetary award, but the IRS issued an apology for allowing somebody to mishandle his tax returns. Interesting. Again, Democrats screaming, carrying on, going crazy. But my question to you is, do you think that this is legitimate, even though Trump is the president, and these agencies now come under him? Do you think it's legitimate for him to seek restitution for the damage to himself and to other people in his orbit? Look at that. Who was he? Was that the gardener, I think, in Mar-a-Lago, that they kind of threatened him to take a guilty plea. The FBI did, and he did. And then later on recanted. But, the FBI is not, they're like Iran light or Venezuela light. They may not torture you with spikes and rubber hoses, but they have ways of making you plead guilty to things you're not guilty of. I know, because I've worked several cases on the other side, on the defendant's side, where they have this 99% of all FBI cases are proven because they force a plea deal. They don't go to court. Once they go to court, that number plummets. Or they drop the case when one of their targets insists on going to court. And I wish that more targets would demand court, but it's very expensive to do. All right, other cases, other examples, broader federal misconduct cases, families of victims in high-profile federal overreach cases. Settlements occasionally occur in cases involving FBI misconduct, which we were just talking about, entrapment claims or civil rights violation, e.g. post 9/11 or terrorism-related probes, but specific names and amounts are often confidential or aggregated. Examples include FTCA settlements for malicious prosecution where the government conceded errors. And that was, they went after Muslims after 9/11. Broader context from exoneree civil suits. Some individuals wrongly convicted with federal involvement, FBI lab errors, or informant misconduct have received federal portions of settlement judgments through primary compensation, and it's often through the states. Average civil award settlements for wrongful convictions, including federal elements, can range from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions, but federal liability is narrow. And then finally, you can get a list of places or a list of the funds that went out the door from the judgment fund. And there's some other places here that you can look to see if you are interested. But all of these people have sued the federal government because they felt that they were wrongfully targeted. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that, how often do you think that happens? Do you think that it's more often than not? I'm interested. Pratt has got it for LA. I think you're right, Robert. I think that Pratt, it just may work. I mean, look, it won't be the first time, right? Sonny Bono was a Republican, and he won LA, so possibly. Study your state, revised penal code statutes. That's how you submit your claims against your state officials, right? So, but there's also, now this anti-weaponization fund is a federal fund. It's through the DOJ. So there's going to be a commission. Actually, I'll share the screen. Let me say hi to Gloria. Hi, Gloria. Let's see. Okay, share screen. It's right here. Okay, share. So the DOJ's Anti-Weaponization Fund, also called the Truth and Justice Fund or similar, is a new $1.776 billion compensation program announced on May 18, 2026. Key highlights: provides a process for individuals claiming they were victims of government weaponization, lawfare, or politically motivated investigations, prosecutions, primarily under the Biden administration, to seek financial compensation, redress, or formal apologies. But we know that it's not just the Biden administration. It's any administration. The $1776 billion, a nod to the start of our country, is the amount. No new congressional approval is needed. Unused funds revert to the government after the program ends on December 15, 2028. So it's a limited time program. It's going to be overseen by a 5-member commission, mostly appointed by Acting Attorney General Todd Blanchett. It will issue quarterly reports on payouts and reliefs granted. Eligibility: it's open to those alleging targeting for political, personal, or ideological reasons. Supporters see it as a justice for Biden-era cases. Trump allies, January 6 defendants, pro-life activists. Critics call it a slush fund for Trump supporters. I think that that's so fucking funny. And why? Because the slush fund for Biden supporters was clearly there in the way of the DNC getting money from outside and donors, like out of the country, illegally through Act Blue, and then of course all the fraud that donated back to their campaigns. Crazy. So context and reactions: Trump DOJ review, part of the broader efforts to address alleged past abuses tied to an earlier executive order or ending federal weaponization working group. Criticism: Democrats and Watchdog label it corrupt, unconstitutional. I'd like to understand why it's unconstitutional, or a misuse of taxpayer funds to reward allies, with some filing lawsuits to block it. And then the legal basis is it uses existing settlement authority, as I just showed you. Authority and co-plaintiffs get no direct payout, but an apology on the tax leak issue. This is very recent development, announced yesterday. So we don't know all of everything, but we know enough. Okay, let's get rid of this poll. I really would like to know what you guys think, and then I'd like to know whether or not we believe that this should just be the first step in restitution for Americans, not just Americans who were wronged individually, because that's a boon, right? It's a cash boon, and we are all responsible for it when government screws up like that, and then we have to pay victims out. That's our tax dollars, and that's where it's going, and so we should all be paying attention. But I have this cockamamie idea that, and I want to know, do you think it's cockamamie? We should receive dollar for dollar for all of these crazy grants and the expenditures that have been made for the benefit of non-citizens without our knowing. And like last night's show, right? The fact that our tax dollars went to the UN and to the NGOs, and those NGOs and the UN were bringing in illegal migrants who then we now have to, food stamps, Medicaid, housing, all kinds of different grants. And then how about the people who lost their lives to these illegal migrants? That was our tax dollars that paid for that. So should we be able to sue the government? I mean, it would create chaos, but I think that it would force the media to acknowledge the wrongdoing for not just, I'm not just going to say Democrats, because it's not just Democrats. There has been wrongdoing, corruption, and expenditures of ridiculous amounts of money that do not benefit the American people, but wound up with, let's just talk about all of those government contracts for weapons during the Desert Storm, and then Bush this Jr. Looking for weapons of mass destruction. I mean, there has been a lot of folly, especially amongst, let's say, war or our peacekeeping, our policing of the world. And I think we should look into that. And I think that we should do that while Trump is in office, because he's very transparent and we get to see it all. Let's see what else. State Supreme Courts are hiding because they don't want to hear cases. I'm guessing, right? They don't want to have to find against somebody. I wonder. It's a mixed bag. Okay, why is it a mixed bag? I mean, I know it's going to cause chaos, but sometimes chaos is better than not. I mean, we've been, just going along to get along all this time, and it's cost us. We're working until June to pay our tax bills in America. And we're still not getting the services we deserve. I had a friend, this is Jeff Pardo, right? Well, obviously, I put it up on the screen. I'm a little tired. Okay. I had a friend that a federal group called her and threatened her with fines and jail time for her post because she knew informants. Then her cell phone. She heard people on her cell phone and more. Well, what was it? Operation, they went after all of the members of Congress, and they were getting their phone records. That's they're victims, right? All those people, as I said before, that could not, got doxxed because of Facebook posts or Instagram posts. How about the New York Post? Could the New York Post file under this weaponization? I bet it could. Hello, New York Post, if you're out there, listen, because they lost their right to Twitter for a very long time for putting the Hunter Biden laptop up, which we know was directly influenced by the Biden administration. So will the New York Post be able to file for compensation under the anti-weaponization funds? I think they should. What do you think? I mean, anybody who lost anything should be able to do this. And at the end of the day, if all 330 million Americans file, so we'll all get $1, whatever. But I think that we should really think about this. And I think that we should consider writing to our members of Congress and our senators and saying, you really need to right the wrong here. We're not going to accept all this corruption because so many of them were in on it, right? So, at some point you have to give relief to the people. I mean, you just have to, because they were supposed to be overseeing this stuff and they never did. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for being here with me tonight. We will be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. But it may be next week is going to be kind of a little odd because we're going to have Memorial Day celebrations. So we're going to probably only have shows until Thursday this week, and then we probably won't be back until Tuesday next week. So anyway, thank you all for coming and spending some time with me, and I will see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Bye all.